thank you all for what you do. I came to this country as an immigrant when I was 16 by myself. My parents had about $5,000 in their bank account, and they used the whole thing to send me here by myself for college because they felt like this was the place I was going to get the best education. It was all about education. Everything that I have is because of education and because my parents sacrificed everything they had to do that. And I tell my parents today that I was never sufficiently grateful until my son turned 16. And then I started thinking about what that meant to send your kid across the ocean, use all your savings to do it, know that they might never come back. And because our immigration system is so broken, I have never been able to bring them here. So they are getting older in India, and I am getting older here, but my mother calls me every day, practically, and says, how did it go? What happened today on the campaign? She's never been political, really, but she came out here and spent some time with me and got completely engaged. And yesterday she sent me a message saying, Michelle Obama was so fabulous. Do you think she'd let me carry her bags for her? I thought, oh, Mom, you are really watching too much now. But I really feel like that opportunity that I got when I was 16 is why I had to pay it forward. I had to make sure that I was getting opportunity for everybody else and not just taking something and keeping it for myself. And that's why for the last 25 years, I've been an activist and an organizer, really trying to build opportunity for other people and to build the movements that we need that I think, hi G, that I think really create the kind of change that we are going to require if we want the policies that we are talking about here today. So I actually worked in international public health was my first, and I guess I should say that when I came, I went to Georgetown University undergrad. We had one phone call home that we were allowed a year because we had no money. And I bet you can guess what 3 professions I was allowed to be according to my father when he sent me here. Doctor, lawyer, engineer. There we go. Everybody always gets it like that. And so you can imagine my sophomore year of college, I used my one phone call home a year to call my father from the dorm phone, you know, the one with the cord and everything, and to tell him that I was no longer going to be an economics major, I was going to be an English literature major. And then I had to hold the phone away from my ear like this as he screamed at me and said, I didn't send you to the United States to learn how to speak English, you already know how to speak English. And of course he was worried about my sustainability, so I told him that I would get the same job with an English degree that I would have gotten with an economics degree, which in early 1982 when I graduated meant going to Wall Street and working for an investment bank, Payne Weber, on Wall Street in leveraged buyouts. And I'll tell you something, it was an amazing experience for a number of reasons. Number one, they always think that people of color, women of color in particular, and social justice don't know anything about numbers. You can put a spreadsheet in front of me and in 3 minutes I'll tell you what's wrong with it. So it really taught me some very important skills for later life. But the second thing that I tell young people that I mentor now is that it is just as important to do the things that make you realize what you don't want to do in life as it is to do those things that help you to figure out what you do want to do. And what I learned on Wall Street is all the stuff that we're seeing now, the foreclosure crisis, all of these things that we see, I knew that was not for me. And so I left and I decided to spend the rest of my life devoted to social justice. But I had that experience to help me get there. And I started in public health, in international public health, and worked all over the world, in Africa and Latin America, in Asia, on the ground. I really, you know, I got to see the effects of war. We were talking about war earlier, or somebody here was talking about war, I think it was you. I got to see the effects of communities ravaged by war when I worked in refugee camps along the borders of Laos and Cambodia. And for me, that knowledge and the knowledge that I gained working in villages when I lived for 2 years in India on a fellowship was that people at the ground can make the most tremendous change. And that when people come together, and women in particular that I worked with across India and Africa all over, were just remarkable in saving forests by hugging trees and refusing to let them get cut down, or by fighting for education in their villages because they knew that that was the only way their kids were going to have any kind of opportunity. That was such a big part of making me the organizer that I am, and of recognizing how much the United States needs to understand the rest of the world. And I remember crying when Obama became president because I thought, for the first time, we have a president who knows there is a rest of the world. I mean, that was kind of a phenomenal idea. And so I took that very clearly, came back to the United States, and 9/11 happened. And that was the start of something that I had no idea it was going to be an organization. I didn't intend to start an organization. I just saw what was happening, the civil liberties abuses, the illegal deportations that were being put forward by the Bush administration, and felt like I had to do something. And so I started organizing with community members who were being affected directly, and we went on to successfully sue the Bush administration and to stop thousands of people across the country from being deported. And that was an amazing victory. And that just led to this organization, Hate Free Zone Campaign of Washington is what it was called, and then we changed our name to One America in 2008. But the same organization, organizing tens of thousands of people across our state for comprehensive immigration reform so we could get undocumented immigrants out of the shadows. And educators were key in that. What you talked about, what each of you talked about, Rick, I totally remember Global Connections. I was so inspired by that group of people. By that group of kids, and talking to them with an experience that couldn't replicate what they had been through. Some of them had been through some incredible stuff in their lives, but an understanding that every single one of us has a place to stand, and that our job is to claim, stand for, and fight for the vision of the country that I came to. The country that I came to because I believed that all of this stuff was possible. And so that was the work of One America, and organizing tens of thousands of people for comprehensive immigration reform led to then leading the largest voter registration drive in the history of the state. We registered 23,000 new immigrant citizens to vote, which was incredible. And then went on to fight with labor unions in coalitions over the course of 12 years with our education unions, but our grocery store unions, really helping people to understand what collective bargaining is and why it's important. And so those massive coalitions are why we have some of the best rights for immigrants in this state, as you know, any state in the country. We're the only state that still provides driver's licenses for everybody, regardless of citizenship. We have incredible CHIP and other kinds of social service programs that are available to people regardless of citizenship status. So why run for office? Never thought I would, really was not interested in it, have been involved in civil disobedience, have done a lot of organizing things on the outside, but I started getting tired of trying to get people in office to do the things that we all feel that should happen. And I decided it was time for me to just get in there and try to do it myself. And I had a theory of change, which is the other thing, that we ask too little of our elected officials. We just ask them to be a good vote. And even that, sometimes we have to beg them to be a good vote. But what if we use the electoral platform, this elected office platform, to organize? And to organize on the inside with legislators on the inside, but also to organize and make the connection to people outside. Because as long as we only have 30% of people voting, we are never going to get what we want. And the way that we're going to get more than 30% of people voting is to energize, inspire, engage all of these people in this great experiment we call democracy. And so it's an organizing campaign in my mind. You can use elected office as an organizing platform, but while you're there, you can get a hell of a lot of stuff done. And so we were really thrilled to get the IB money for the Rainier Beach program, stuck into a budget proviso, which I even forgot to tell you about, but we got it done. I was really excited to work on transportation and say, hey, what about race and gender in transportation jobs? So when we passed the transportation package, we're putting $15 billion into creating 200,000 jobs across the state. But how about we pass a bill that puts $5.25 million into pre-apprenticeship programs specifically for women and people of color, so that they can actually get some of those jobs. And I got it done, even though I'm in a Republican majority in the state Senate. And then how about getting in there and finding out that low-income women on Medicaid get reimbursed differently for their contraceptives, so they have to pay a lot more for the most effective forms of contraception versus other women who aren't on Medicaid. Why not just change the reimbursement rates? We made it possible for millions of women to have access to long-acting reversible contraceptives just by doing that. And so there is real stuff that you can get done inside, but there is also the opportunity to organize. And so this campaign for Congress, I intend to fight for the same things I fought for my whole life. Nothing has changed. You all know what I stand for. It's what I'm going to stand for. Income inequality, it is crazy that we have the wealth and income inequality that we have. And that is not only lifting the minimum wage, which I was a part of the committee that raised the minimum wage, but it's also corporate tax revenue, right? How do we go all of a sudden from corporations paying 6% of GDP in corporate tax revenue to paying 2%? That's what's happened. So we need to fix the whole tax system, and we need to bring equality around. We need to invest in education. It's what I fought for all along. And on the state Senate floor, I remember one day I was not going to speak because I had been speaking a lot. And then a senator on the other side got up and started, we were talking about teacher pay, which you all will appreciate, educator pay. And senator on the other side got up and said, the thing about teachers is they don't do this job for money. They do it for love. And I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take it. And I stood up and just gave a little speech about how, sure, our teachers do it for love, but that doesn't mean you don't get to have money so that you can live and afford a house in the district where you teach. And by the way, if it was really that simple, then how about all those CEOs? If they're just doing it for love, maybe they shouldn't get paid either. And so it was I did, yeah, I did. Yes, it made the newspapers and everything, but it's all for love. But, for me, I have a kid. He's a proud graduate of Garfield High School, went through the public school system. If you're going to send your child to be with somebody for the majority of the day, wouldn't you want them to be paid well? I would. I want you guys to be paid really, really well, so you are really happy and you do the best job possible with my kid. So it's just common sense to me, and we are going to have to fight at the federal level to make sure that we're addressing the testing and this idea that somehow we have to monitor everything that you all do in the classrooms, but we don't give you any support, and we only monitor your success by tests. Tests to me are not a bad thing, one, not 50, but they should be used so that you can have a tool to determine where your kids are and what they need, and in order to go to wherever they need to go. So that's a very, very different thing. And so I'm going to fight for that in Congress as well. And then, of course, climate change, which I've been a climate justice advocate for a long time. And so that, my son says to me, Mom, your generation really screwed it up for the rest of us. And I kind of think he's true. This is an urgent crisis, and we've got to fix it, but it's going to require taking on the big oil companies that are blocking progress. And finally, I'll just say on Social Security and Medicare, I got to meet Senator Sanders when he and I were both speaking at the rally for the anniversary of Social Security and Medicare. And I came off the stage, and the first time I met him, he said, hey, that was a great speech. You said everything I was going to say. And as it turned out, it was a good thing because he didn't get to speak. So that's, to me, it's just the wrong conversation to talk about cutting Social Security and Medicare when you know that you can scrap the cap and bring in all the income that's needed. So I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited to be with a group of educators who, in my mind, are really the heroes and sheroes of our society, because you take care of our kids, you educate them, and you teach them what they need to know from the very beginning so that we don't have a culture of violence, so that we can understand how we bring our full selves to the picture. And this is going to be a fight to get into this seat. There's a lot of people running. There's some good Democrats in the race, but I really believe that what we need is people who will help to build the platform for leadership from everywhere to come together and create the movement that we need for change. So thank you all so much, and you're all thrilled.